This presentation includes forward-looking statements as determined by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. All statements, other than statements of historical facts, included in this presentation that address activities, events, or developments that the company believes or anticipate will or may occur in the future are forward-looking statements. Such forward-looking statements involve known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors which may cause the actual results, performance, or achievements of the company to be materially different from any future results, performance, or achievements expressed or implied by such forward-looking statements. Such factors include general economic and business conditions, the ability to acquire and develop specific projects, the ability to fund operations, healthcare service demands, changes in healthcare practices, government regulation, and other factors over which the company has little or no control. The company does not intend and is not obligated to update publicly any forward-looking statements. The contents of this presentation should be considered in conjunction with the warnings and cautionary statements contained in the company's recent filings with the SEC. Having said that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Bill Donovan, our CEO.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Bill Donovan, CEO. We have a full house today. John and I are the only people at corporate headquarters. Everybody else is scattered everywhere. But with us today, myself, John Bergeron, CFO, we have Dr. Matt DeGaetano from Personal Injury Institute. We have Jim Schwartz, our new manager on the East Coast. We hope to have David Spencer on, but he's in North Texas doing an installation. And we have a local plaintiff attorney in Houston who's actually in court, but he may call in as we proceed with this conference call. But I just want to thank everyone for being here. Before we get to the numbers, let me just say a few things of most importance. You know, after 8 consecutive quarters of losses, which coincide with our decision to leave Florida and McAllen, causing the loss of over 70% of our revenue base, we started building the company up. In Q1 2016, we are profitable. And of interest, the profit has come from the legacy business, the financing, not the QBH. However, we anticipate some sales of QBH soon, and any net profits coming out of QBH sales will go right into the legacy business. On our slide here, I've mentioned this slide before. We've talked about how healthcare is under attack, medicine's under attack, so on and so forth. Under slot number 2, physician practices, what we're going to do today is really focus on Colossus training and how it works with the QBH documentation. And I'm going to have Dr. Matt on soon, and he will tell us how these 2 objective testing devices and data software, how it works together. And I think that Colossus is great. It's important for doctors to learn it because it makes the doctor a better doctor, because it requires documentation. The QBH, and Matt will go into this, how does it make Colossus better? So they really go hand in hand together. The use of the halo, we've always focused about outpatient diagnostic procedures, but we have now entered into the part where we're taking the modified halo, QBH RX, into hospitals because there's a need to objectively document what's being done in surgery. times have changed, and we now have surgeons and we have some hospitals who want to provide the documentation on video. Everything now is going to video, as our investors know. But we now have a couple hospitals, and we have surgeons at these hospitals who want to use the video. Next slide. There's been a lot of developments in Q1. We're starting to attract docs who've heard about the Halo, and they now want to become part of the legacy financing business. Number two, we've done an agreement with Dr. Matthew DeGaetano from Dallas, who is an expert in Colossus documentation and other areas. And we'll have Matt talk in a minute. We have on the East Coast Jim Schwartz, who is now working with us to help implement our goals from Boston to Florida. In QB1, we went back to our patent attorney. We're now filing a patent in Europe on the Halo because we have the CE mark, and we have reasons because we've been approached by a company in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland who's very interested in this, but we want to get a patent filed before that. As I mentioned earlier, David will probably get on the call later today. He's just finished, and he sent me a text with a picture of the new system working. And we're working on final arrangements with two hospitals, and there's surgeons at these hospitals that do want a videotape. Previously, we talked about the QVH video teleshare, and we continue on that route. Next slide.
Just a minute.
There's going to be, we want the next slide is talking about chronic pain. And the market is huge. Chronic pain means any patients with pain more than 3 months. And as our member of the board, Dr. Jeffrey Cronk, has written, injury is the primary event that initiates the disease of chronic pain. That's $635 billion a year. But pay attention to cancer at $245 billion a year. That number is important. Next slide.
Yes, joinwebinar.com.
This is what I just talked about. There's more than 25 million adults with chronic pain. And if you notice down on the bottom, it says Washington Post, 8/11/2015. Now, I asked you to remember, cancer is $245 billion a year. Let's now, next slide, go to auto accidents. And
Why you didn't get it? I told Bill to call you early. Stay with me one more minute. I'll give you the code to put in.
at the bottom of the slide, you'll say on the auto accidents, it's 8/17/2015. This market is based on what Newsweek reports is probably $250 billion a year. We're having a technical problem here with the slides. But the auto accident, it's almost approaching 300 billion. And in the Newsweek on 8/17/2015, there were 2.3 million serious injuries in auto accidents in 2015. And that means these are patients that required medical consultation. And this is during a 6-month period, up 30% when compared with 2014. So if we take the estimated cost, you'll see we're approaching $300 billion a year. This is more than cancer. So I feel the market we in gives us a lot of opportunities. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, Matt DeGaetano is a very, very knowledgeable person. We were introduced to him by Dr. Cronk. And I'm going to ask Matt, Dr. Matt, to talk a little about Colossus. He's an expert in this. He trained under Jim Mathis. And Dr. Matt, can you say some words about Colossus, Halo, and how we educate doctors on both aspects?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity. You know, my experience in personal injury, specific as a treating doctor, I recognize that there's basically a system that is being used to control how money is distributed. And one of the most recognized systems is this valuation system known as Colossus. It was designed in Australia. It was brought to the United States. And all the major users of, or all the major insurance companies in the auto industry wind up using this level of software. Now, there's about 86 different related software. So when we use the term Colossus, we're recognizing that it's a cumulative name because there's just so many different versions, but they all follow the Colossus framework. But what I learned mostly is that there are what are known as value drivers, severity points, and how the system recognizes them. And how they recognize them is through the physician's ability to document and diagnose it. So this evolution of Halo, in my opinion, is the second best tool only to the MRI. But the MRI is diagnostic. This tool is now the next evolution of that treatment schedule, whether it be injections, surgeries, and now it's proof. And I can tell you from what the adjusters appreciate, what the insurance companies recognize, it makes sense to pay these cases fairly when they see that the individual received a treatment, it's a validated treatment, the physician did things the right way, all of those things. So I know that these things line up well. So within the Colossus framework, these systems are scoring points and they're looking at what's going to be reasonable and necessary. They're looking at all these different factors, and then of course they determine the general damages. And general damage is going to be what is known as pain and suffering, which is what Dr. Donovan was alluding to with chronicity in the United States. We're looking at approximately 10% to 20% of all individuals involved in car wrecks that will become chronic. That's anywhere between 400,000 to 600,000 individuals that have chronicity just from auto, and that's just rear impact collisions, not even all the others. So I knew I was not positioning my information properly, and that's where this tool works for the high-level physicians, the interventional pain, orthopedic surgeons, and I believe there's going to be some other tools that will evolve off of that. So I could just say that from my perspective, it's one of the best tools that I've seen in this arena and probably 19 years, 20 years that I've been in practice.
Matt, thank you very much. One more thing about Colossus that most people don't realize. It actually makes the treating doctor a much better doctor. So Colossus really helps in documentation and verification. So that means doctors like me, we have to slow down, we have to ask the right questions, and we have to document. So everybody thinks that Colossus, only benefits insurance companies. Actually not. It helps doctors become better doctors for documentation. Next slide. We're going to now go into the numbers, and I thought it was best that we give you some background on Colossus, Dr. Matt, and so forth. Here's our snapshot here. We have the shareholder equity, 3.6 million or 18 cents a share. Our working capital is 2.9 to 1. The inside ownership is 46%, and we have approximately 700 beneficial shareholders. There's 10.6 million of funded cases that are waiting to settle. And I think you'll see when we go into the graphs how the settlements have progressed over the years. Next slide. Next slide. When we compare Q1 15 with Q1 16, you see that we made a profit in 16. That's after 8 consecutive quarters of losses. And I think the other important thing is the legacy business is what made it profitable. We spent a lot of time and a lot of money on the QVH, which is we want to develop. But what we're anticipate is as we sell the QVH units, the net profit of these will be used for the legacy business. So the more QVH we can sell, the more money that we'll have for the legacy business. I'm now going to turn this part over to John Bergeron, CFO.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Donovan. The Q1 results over the Q1 2015 results are a factor of 3 things. One is that we cut down our expenses a lot. We didn't have many non-cash director and officer charges for warrants and options and things of that nature. The second thing is that we didn't have any, or we had very little R&D cost.
You can hear it, so you'll know what you're getting. Okay.
2015 we had over 82,000 as compared to 6,000 for the first quarter of 2016. And finally, we had higher volume in revenue. We're seeing more patients, coupled with the fact that we're recognizing a higher percentage of the revenue based on our collections. It's gone up from 48 to 52%. Those are the really 3 main drivers that created the positive net income. We're very excited, and we hope to continue that trend in the second quarter. Next slide, please. Here's just a consolidated balance sheet. I mean, kind of went over the highlights. We have a very good current ratio. The shareholder equity remains strong for us. We have enough cash to get by. We do not have any borrowing needs at this time. We continue to collect our receivables. I will say this, the Florida receivables, we always try to reserve for. That is a question as we've had some problems in Florida, but we still are reserving for them, and at this time we believe our reserves are adequate. Next slide, please.
Let me just make a comment. I apologize for the problems we're having, but Larry Tilka did get out of court in time, and we've been trying to get him on really remotely, and I'm hoping we have him on right now. Larry, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Thank God. Carry on. Again, I apologize for all this. I've had to do two things at once here with two different phones. Carry on.
Let me introduce Larry. Larry's an attorney in Houston. When he started out after law school, he worked for defense firms, good firms, and then he went in practice by himself. And about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I approached him and I said, look, we're working on something that I think it makes sense from an orthopedic standpoint. That is, when I'm in depositions, defense, plaintiff, in fact, nobody at the table really understood what we were doing with spine injections. They knew the words, but nobody really knew what it meant. And I talked to Larry, and in 1 millisecond, he understood the whole thing. So I bounce a lot of things off Larry because I trust him, and he's been on both sides of the fence, but he knows that anytime doctors videotape something, they're going to do a better procedure and be more accurate and only do what is absolutely needed and necessary. So Larry's agreed to come on, say a few words. Larry, welcome to our conference call.
Thank you, Doctor. I've had clients that have had the benefit of the halo being utilized in their treatment regimen. And through depositions, we were able to use the videos captured by the halo showing the entire procedure, client's reaction, and in deposition, opposing counsel was basically caught with inability to criticize or diminish what was being done or why. The video paints a picture that we cannot express orally, no matter the quality of the speaker. That video says it all, and it has a dramatic effect on the defense, as well as, I believe, their adjustments of the value of the case, because we are able to put in video the application of this procedure.
I think that when I started with this, I guess almost 3 years ago, I went to Larry and I said, you know, how can this be beneficial? He said, well, a lot of people think an epidural steroid injection is like a Botox injection. Well, talk to any lady that's had babies with an epidural. It's not a Botox injection. So I think Larry is absolutely right. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And a video is dramatic because it tells the story of what's going on. And in effect, the curtain is pulled back so that everybody knows what's going on at the procedure. And we'll get back to Larry again later on in the conference. On this slide here, we're talking about cases and procedures. It's about 8,000 procedures, and the cases are 4,500. Since we started doing this, the next slide. Since we started doing this, only 171 cases or 3.7%, have ended in no collection. So it's a low percent. I feel that if we have proper documentation and only do procedures on cases that need it, I think this is the key to success. And that's what we plan to do, is to continue the same approach. So we've collected over $14 million, and we only started and funded this for less than $3 million. So I think it's been a good return, but I think we're getting ready to accelerate the growth. Next slide. This will give you an idea. These are cases that we've already done. And I think that the 171 cases were no payment. That represented about $440,000. This is the legacy business we're talking about. And our goal is to increase the number and quality of cases with procedures. But I think there's clear evidence that this core business model, the legacy part, does work. Next slide. This slide basically shows why we've been talking about the QVH RX. When we do the spine injections, procedures like the previous slide, where we've done X number of procedures, almost 8,000, those are done with a QVH because you're doing it with a C-arm. In open surgery or surgeries to different areas, we've modified the QVH. This is a whole business part that we have not captured. But we now have the technology. So now cases that we've been treating that goes to a spine surgeon to have a 1 or 2 level fusion to the neck, we're going to start videotaping these. We needed 2 things. We obviously needed the hospitals that would permit this, and we needed the surgeons who would be interested in it. Well, we found both. So now we're going to the next step, is taking our cases that have been worked up and continue the video storyboard on the patient's treatment. We're also starting at the front end, where with the primary care treater and provider, we're encouraging them to take the video, store it in box, then you can create your storyboard for each individual patient or client. Next slide. The future shareholder value, that's what everybody wants to know. Well, we feel that we've gone through the valley of death, if we may say, the last couple years, but this is too important to give up on. Clients need it, patients need it, and we have to continue making QVH better, both with the docked QVH and the undocked QVH. And we need to add more cases into the legacy business. Now, we've taken the U.S. patent, we have the CE mark, and we've been back to the patent attorneys who are out of Pittsburgh. We're doing continuations of patents on the original patent, and we're filing patents in the EU. And once that has been initiated, we then will look at expanding to areas that we've been approached. Now, as you know, we've changed our name from Spine Pain Management, Inc. to Spine Injury Solutions. You've heard Dr. Matt speak. Dr. Matt is going to be very, very involved with Colossus training for doctors and clinics who purchase a QVH. We're developing solutions. Most medical doctors have never heard of Colossus. Most chiropractors have. All attorneys know Colossus. And we're finding solutions for the docs, the patients, the clients. So we're going to be working very closely with Dr. Matt and other people. Next slide. It's with pleasure that we introduce you to Jim Swartz. We've known Jim for years. His family's been involved with the company. And he approached us a year and a half ago and he says the time's not right. A year ago, time's not right. 6 months ago, time's not right. But Jim is now working with us. And as you look at his resume, he's been in sales and marketing. He was initially with Judicate, which was a mediation surgeon, a services company dealing with attorneys and liability insurers. Then he was involved with Invisalign, the dental stuff, where he had to deal with the dentist staff, because the staff was critical in getting Invisalign into the dentist office. That is no different than dealing with attorneys, the paralegals, their staff, to understand and appreciate the value of video, and with the doctor's staff. So Invisalign and QVH are very, very similar. And then Jim was involved in the Mid-Atlantic region with enzyme products to chiropractors. So his background really fits in to what we're doing. And Jim, I'd like to have you say a few words about how you see QVH, Colossus, transparency helping patients, doctors, and so forth.
Well, thanks, Dr. Donovan. First off, I'm extremely excited to be part of the team. As Dr. Donovan mentioned, I've been sitting on the sidelines, waiting, saying, you know, are we ready, coach? Put me in the game, put me in the game. Not yet, not yet. So here we are, it's game time, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of the sales efforts of the QVH in the Northeast region. And yeah, as Dr. Donovan suggested or mentioned, my background, I think, lends itself very well to the QVH and Colossus, in that I think training is going to be critical. And our target market audience of, our target market, should I say, of personal injury attorneys and interventional pain specialists, chiropractors, you know, as we grow, who knows, maybe ambulatory surgery centers, urgent care centers, university training facilities. It's going to be critical to have a physical presence in this area, and someone who is in the room with the doctors, with the attorneys, educating them on QVH, and following through with prospects, with leads. I certainly have a fair number of my own personal contacts and a pretty large network, since I've lived in this area for much of my life, which I think is going to be hugely beneficial to the future efforts of the QVH sales. So I'm going to utilize pretty much all of the tools in my toolbox here to move the needle here with QVH sales. That's why Dr. Donovan brought me aboard, and that's what I intend on doing. And I would like to also add, since I heard Larry's voice, when I was down in Houston a few weeks ago, I met Larry. We had dinner, and I was thoroughly impressed with his passion for the quad video halo and how it's impacted in a positive way, obviously, his practice, and I think he's going to be hugely beneficial to my efforts as well as a champion, because clearly when you're going into these personal injury attorneys, not the easiest group to sell to, and so I think having someone like Larry in our corner, who's been on both sides, who can almost be a walking testimonial, I think is going to be really extremely important moving forward. And I would also like to add, or should I say maybe close by saying, I think once we get one of these units placed, it's going to break the seal up here, and I think we'll be able to really get some forward movement once we get a unit placed. And so all of my energy, all of my efforts are going to be into achieving that goal. And again, thank you, Dr. Donovan. I'm really excited to get going here.
Well, Jim, it's a pleasure having you on board. In fact, I'm going to be up in the East Coast next week, and Jim will be with me in a group for about 3 days. So we're trying to move ahead. Here's a slide on Larry, and we'll get back to Larry with any questions that you might have. Next slide. Our management goals on 2016 are pretty straightforward. We need to add new doctor affiliates and locations. Dr. Matt is going to be incredibly helpful, because for years now, he's put on seminars to doctors all over the country on understanding Colossus, how Colossus will make you a better doctor, plus closed head injuries, so on and so forth. Many of these doctors who came to his seminars, he has gone in and done individual training. So Dr. Matt is just a very experienced and knowledgeable person, besides being a really great guy. I feel he's going to help us identify new doctor affiliates and locations. We're also targeting corporate-owned halo clinics in certain states where there's no corporate practice of medicine issue. We're in active discussion right now. Number 3, Tim has come up with some new methods of collection and monitoring the accounts receivable, and he's put together a terrific team. So when we go out and we meet new docs, potential docs, it's myself, it's Dr. Matt, and Tim. And on the East Coast, Jim will be involved so that we have boots on the ground in that area to help Matt, to help Tim. And we're working on some new aspects of the QVH where the speed is going to be much faster. Everything that is videotaped goes straight to the box, the BOX, and you pull down what you need in a secure manner. Next slide. We opened an affiliate program in Tyler earlier this year. And unbeknownst to us, March 4th, 2016, the Tyler group was so happy with the QVH, they put out their own press release. We didn't even know about it. And somebody found it, and we called Dr. Foltz in his group, And I said, hey, what's going on? They said, oh, listen, we love this. We put our own press release, and this was primarily targeted for East Texas. And that would be from the central part of Texas on the east all the ways down to the Beaumont area. I mean, it's a huge part of the state, but Dr. Foltz is a very prominent interventional pain doctor in that area. Need to say, they love it. And David is working with them. He just updated them yesterday on something, a new part of the Halo, and so on and so forth. Next slide. As far as I know, we haven't heard from David.
He's not on.
We have David. He's tied up on an installation right now, a big one and a good one. He did text me pictures of the operational video. But I think what I'll say is we're making some changes on the interface module where it's going to be placed. He's definitely increased the speed so that the transmissions are quicker, the storage is quicker, can hold a bigger file, and so it's a constant upgrading situation, which will give everyone a better product. So I think that, and then as I mentioned before, we're filing for an EU patent. But that would pretty much bring us up to date. So I would like to just reiterate some issues before we get to the questions and answers. Medicine's changed. And I was in a city last week, a large city. The doctors were coming to me saying, look, we have been very, very busy, neurosurgery, orthopedics. They're tired of the hassle because of all these changes that have been going on in medicine. And I think what Dr. Matt has taught me and everybody in the company is we have to educate the docs. The docs are unhappy. They're very unhappy with the way medicine is going. So we're providing the solution to the docs. And I think that the next 2 years are going to be very exciting years from us. There's some other technology that we know about, objectively documentation that would be very, very well under the Halo umbrella. So we're looking at a lot of things, but the key to us is our shareholders continue with us. It's been up and down and really bouncy, but hey, you know, we go with it. So we're now going to open up any questions. And once again, thanks.
Okay. Let's see here. First question is from Carl. Well, that's not a substantive question. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. From Mike, will there be a third-party sale of the new QVX RX operating room system in 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be more than one.
Okay. Since Jim Schwartz was involved with marketing and selling defibrillators in early 2000, I'd be interested in how this experience of promoting one medical device on the operating room will help them market and sell a QVH. Well, I don't think that was earmarked, but go ahead, Jim, if you want to try it.
Yeah, sure. You know, when I sold the defibrillators, they were actually not. They were not into the medical community. They were to the actual end user. I worked for a distributor, so it wasn't for Medtronic or Zoll. We did sell those units through the distributor, but to give you an example, I sold the units to bowling alleys, golf courses, places like that. So, you know, now they're widely accepted, but back then you didn't see them in as many places. So to answer the question, I don't know how applicable my defibrillator sales will be to the QBH, but certainly, as was mentioned by Dr. Donovan, my experience working with PI attorneys, and certainly the Invisalign brand, which was heavy on education, lunch and learns, really educating the staff and the doctors on how to use the Invisalign system in order to increase sales for the practice. I think that is probably most applicable. And then even the most recent position where I worked with chiropractors, even though it was enzyme therapy, I certainly built up a little book of business there. So yeah, I think there could be some opportunities in that area as well.
Jim, this is Bill. I think the investor probably was thinking about the defibrillators for our investors over the last couple of years. You know,
oh yeah, well,
when we started, we were going crazy, and then we lost 70% of our revenue. Whack! Well, we all needed a defibrillator. But I tell you one thing, we're not giving up on this journey. I'll tell you that.
I would need to take a refresher course with my first aid training, but you're a doctor, so I'm sure you would be able to administer that. Okay.
That question was from Bill Ryan.
I think our investors needed it.
Yeah, that question was from Bill Ryan. The next question from Lee Gao is the Halo David is installing now a third-party sale?
When we have some information to give to you, we will let you know. We've been in discussions with these people for a while now, and we'll let you know as soon as I see signed papers.
I'm going to ask a side question here. At what point in time do we announce this is a question from me. Do we announce a first sale, or do we wait till we have 5 sales? Because I'm sure everybody's wondering the same thing.
When we get the first sale, I think, as Jim says, it cracks the ice open.
So we'll announce that one. Okay.
Of course we will. You know, and what interest? Well, at the time when things happen, we'll let our shareholders know.
Okay, and here's a question from Steve Miller. In layman's terms, can you please distinguish the Halo from similar competitive devices that are currently in the marketplace? Boy, I sure wish that David was here for that question. But
well,
go ahead.
The only thing, sorta, would be a GoPro that you would put on your head, one view. It's not HIPAA compliant. There is no competitors of multiple video with audio. There are none. So that's how we were able to get the patent.
I think he's referring to the RX, Dr. Donovan.
Oh, the RX.
Well, he doesn't say RX in it, but I'll bet that's what he's referring to. That's a good question. We would leave that to David, because when he was doing a trial on it, I said to him, are there any competitors doing what we're doing? He says, not the way that we're doing it. But I will address that, and we'll get out some kind of an update on that. That's a good question. But I'll tell you one thing. What's really interesting, I was at a hospital last week owned by doctors, very nice hospital. The administrator, the CEO, very nice. And we said, look, there's 2 doctors on your staff
who would like to have their surgeries videotaped. What are your comments? He said, fine, as long as the patient agrees and the doctor wants it, it can be done. We'll obviously monitor the equipment and so on and so forth. So we said, fine, we'll come up with something. While we're talking, in comes a young surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, who operates on hips, does the joints. And he does it through an anterior approach, very well trained. And we're talking, and he had no idea why we were there. He came in to see the CEO. So I was introduced, and so he's telling me what he does and where he trains. He trained with Steadman and Hawkins down in Florida. It's a good program. And he said he does such and such. I said, have you ever taken out any of the defective hips and hip joints? He said, yes, I have. I said, would it be of any value if we videotape those with 2 or 3 different video cameras? And he looked at me and he says, God, he says, that would be terrific. And then he paused, he says, you know, there's a guy I trained with. He is up in Kentucky or Tennessee somewhere, same kind of training, but he's with a clinic where they're bringing in patients from all over the country to have their hips redone for these defective hips. And I said, well, do you think your friend would want them videotaped? He said, absolutely. And then he said, you know, one of the very large banks in the United States are funding all of those surgeries. So I think there's a lot of upside potential with the QBHRX.
Here's a question for Larry. We've heard from Dr. Matt on the strengths of Colossus and QVH. How do you as a practitioner see the two working together?
You know, Colossus has been utilized by the insurance companies to advise their adjusters what to offer on a case. And they use, you know, where the accident happens, type of impact. They also look at, you know, diagnosis codes, treatments, things like that. What Colossus does is assigns a number of values that their adjusters work from to try and resolve the case. What Colossus cannot do is understand how the Halo or QBH video of the procedure affects the outcome of a case from a juror standpoint or a court standpoint. That adds an element they're not able to put into their equation. In that regard, I think it increases the value of the case, because the defense lawyer who is going to have to depose and make a representation, or the adjuster who gets this as part of the record, is going to have to say, what are we going to do with this? We can't input this into this Colossus computer program. And since it's outside their program, they've got to come up with some other way to evaluate it. My personal experience has been that when we were in deposition, literally in deposition, using the film procedure, there was dramatic effect on defense counsel, which I think correlated to the dramatic effect in the increase of the price of my case, which we were able to settle.
Okay, next question. Thank you, Larry. Next question, Dr. Donovan. Is there any progress in marketing spin systems equipment in the western U.S., specifically to California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, as opposed to Texas?
Yes. We have been talking with some people out west, and Dr. Matt has some very, very strong connections out west. We wanted to get the right people on board, concentrate here, go to adjacent states, and expand and outwards. We brought in Jim to be our footprint out on the East Coast. We feel there's some significant opportunities. Dr. Matt, you've done a lot of work out west in the Northwest. What are your thoughts about the QVH?
Well, in those markets, certainly in California, if we look at pretty large market, Washington State. Washington State has some of the best personal injury in the country. So, with the providers that are involved in that particular arena, this system is something that's really significant. And going off of what was discussed a couple minutes ago by Larry, Colossus is really it's a pre-settlement tool that the third-party insurance companies use. And then once it goes past or goes into deposition and go into trial, then Colossus is no longer really involved. Now it's about dollars and cents. And that's why the halo becomes so significant, because once it gets to that level, then everything's off. And instead of the settlement being at maybe a request of $200,000, now it's going to be $1 million. And halo is the only tool in the medical community that can validate it, stamp it, with the patient being watermarked, the patient stating why they're there, the procedure received, and audio throughout the entire process. There's nothing else like it. So in markets like California and Oregon and Washington State, this will be probably as strong, if not stronger, in some of those markets because of the nature of the policies in the state of California. I think specifically the policy is structured a little bit different. So I can't see how it would be as strong, if not stronger.
And to add to that, Dr. Matt has very, very strong contacts with large groups of marketing and salespeople that target specific groups of docs. And we're working with Matt now to identify which group to deal with and so forth.
Okay, that question was from Bill Ryan again, and Herb Berman has a question. How many clinics can we support with our present financial resources? My concern is added cash flow for each new case from the new facilities.
Great question. It depends what kind of facility. If we're into a Halo-owned clinic, you need less money because you don't have to be buying AR. You're generating it yourself. And that's why we're very interested in corporate-owned clinics. We're going through right now what our needs will be. And if we can prove, we have about $1 million in the bank, but if we can prove that these new developments can facilitate more revenue and more cash, I'm sure we can find the money if we need it. But right now, we're not raising any money as we're talking right now. But we're looking at several models. What can existing cash flow help us grow with? What are different types of clinics? How can that grow? And remember, the QVH RX, by the time a patient has surgery, we're getting much closer to the case settlement at a much higher level. So not only could we be doing the QVH RX video, we could also be financing that surgery case, both for the surgeon and the hospital. So we're looking at several different models right now.
Not looking for any equity models. I think you should confirm, because I know that as a fact. Are you confirming it, Bill, or not confirming it?
Confirming what?
I said you're not looking for any equity. What you're really referring to are various different co-lending sources, I believe, is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Okay, from Harold Gabbery. What other states are similar to Texas for your legacy business, and what do you expect to expand? When do you expect to expand to these states?
New Mexico, Arizona. We'll know about New Jersey, New York, Delaware. There's some states that we're looking at.
And here's a follow-up question with Bill Ryan again. Dr. Donovan, specific to my question on West Coast sales, any progress on the Nevada possibility you and I discussed earlier this year?
No progress, no additional progress, Dr. Ryan, since we last spoke.
Next question from Herb Berman. Can we project with confidence that we will add new clinics in Q2 and Q3?
I don't know what you mean by confidence, but I think there's a pretty good chance we'll have some new clinics.
Okay, another from Harold Gabbery. If you have any more questions, better put them in there. Shouldn't you find a Halo rep as soon as possible for the western states, California in particular?
We're working with a group that could canvass California pretty quick. We're talking with some group of people that Matt has identified.
And here's a question from Tom. Again, this is for Larry, I guess. Let's see here. Can you tell us how using the QVH and Halo has affected, it's a two-part question, your speed of closing cases and percent of increase per case? I guess it means compared to the way it was in the old way.
The speed of case after deposition, when we utilized the Halo procedure, we were going into mediation. We had already increased our settlement offer before we got to mediation. So most of my cases, when we get them down, we're already ready to go into trial. So that's when we're showing the videos and deposing. My objective is to try and get them into the medical records and sent off pre-litigation so they know what I'm coming with. That's what I want to endeavor to do. Dr. Donovan mentioned earlier that pictures speak 1,000 words. With Halo, you spoke more than 1,000 words, and it is so transparent as to what is going on. There is incredible difficulty for them to try and mitigate the effect of what the jurors are going to see, that I think you are going to have a direct result in an increase in the value of your case.
Okay. Did you ever give a percent increase? I think that was one of the questions. On average, can you give some sort of percentage increase that you've been seeing?
No, I've seen about 40 to 60% on them.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Static effect.
I think that pretty much covers it. We don't have any more questions. Again, I want to apologize for the problems early on. For some reason we were not able to get Larry in, but I think you'll all agree that it was certainly worthwhile going through that to get him online. And we just need about 10 more like you, Larry, and we'll be doing great. Dr. Don, would you like to close?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody and for sticking with us, after 8 consecutive quarters of losses. Sure as heck feels good to be making some money and with our legacy business. And I think 3 months from now, hopefully we'll have additional good news. But the medical profession needs the technology, period. So our goal is to keep developing right products, keep making them better, and stay with this journey. We can't be distracted, and there's a lot of sideshows, but we will continue, and we're getting additional people to help us. And I wanted to introduce some of these people with a picture and their voice. We're attracting some very, very talented people, and it's the people that make things happen. So I thank you very much, and we'll talk to you guys in 3 months.
Thank you all, and goodbye.